making a ton of money as a banker, and I would try to spend it all as much as possible on fancy hotels, booze, and a very fun lifestyle. But essentially, you were sort of trying to get away from the lie and the bullshit that you were living in. So when you start to measure everything against Bitcoin, you're like, hell, I'm not spending my money on a pack of smokes or a bottle of booze trying to escape from reality, because my reality is actually quite good.
What's up, you guys? My name's John Chanot, and welcome to the Bitcoin Path podcast. This is a show where we have deeper conversations about Bitcoin and self-sovereignty, about how this new magic internet money is changing the world and changing ourselves at the same time. In this episode, I'm really excited to sit down with Sebastian. Sebastian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John.
Can I call you Seb? Or
yeah, please call me Seb.
You got it.
Yep.
Seb and I had the pleasure of meeting in Miami at one of the Miami Bitcoiners meetup almost a year ago now, right?
I think so, yeah.
And I was, we immediately hit it off, just have a lot in common. Seb, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us what you, just a little brief intro about who you are and what you do too.
Yeah, so I'm Seb, and I think what we have in common is our fondness for a real life, for adventurous life, for travel, especially these days in the freedom-respecting countries of Central and South America, and of course Bitcoin itself.
Excellent, of course. Yeah, so one of the things that struck me, about hearing about what you've been up to and just kind of getting to know you a little bit is, for a lot of us that come into Bitcoin, we kind of have, at least for me personally, like, I get into Bitcoin for freedom, right? For personal freedom, for the ability to like store my wealth and store my value in something that can't be fucked with, so that I can do the things that I want to do, right? Yeah. And for me, one of the things that I'm drawn to is nature, adventure, going exploring. So I just wonder, like, what was that? Was that always a part of your life, wanting to go and explore?
I think I'm a freedom maximalist first and foremost. Even when I was young, I didn't even finish high school. I upped and left to go to Australia, to the other side of the world. Didn't come back for 7 years. In that time, I did figure that the easiest way to get freedom is to become good with the language of money, which I did. I hustled in a lot of different countries, jewelry into Japan where that was booming, construction in Australia, different things. And that was all pre-Bitcoin. As it turned out, I was pretty nifty with numbers and trading. So when I wanted to emigrate to Australia, and I had no qualifications, I went to do a study. During that study, I got asked if I wanted to do a PhD straight after, which I then started doing on strategic management in multinationals. But then I got approached by a bank, and the bank said, "Do you want to come invest some investment portfolios for us?" And I said, "Hell no, I'm not working for a bank. But I'll come on as a consultant just to see what the enemy looks like on the inside." And so I went through the energy portfolios, commodity portfolios of this bank, again did some consulting, and then that turned into a decade-long career trading energy and commodities for a bank, where pretty much the only thing that I had to do is make sure that my trading teams would make a profit. And for the rest, I'd be completely free to travel all over the world with a corporate credit card, living a combined sort of jet-set banker and adventurer life, which was absolutely marvelous.
Wow, that's crazy.
It was crazy. It was travel to over 100 countries in that time, and then the big crisis hit, and luckily, 2008 crisis. And I'd sort of figured that was coming, so I was well hedged, well positioned, and then suggested to my bank to set up a precious metals desk to essentially go back to sound money and get back to more realistic economy, more real life. So I set up a precious metals desk in London, but pretty much all we did was essentially lease or borrow gold from central banks to sell to our customers without actually owning it ourselves. So that really wasn't the path to sound money or getting better either. So then a few years later.
All right, so real quick. So just for listeners who aren't familiar with this kind of system, and because I'm still kind of learning about it too, like what does it mean for a bank to lease or rent gold to sell to customers?
Well, at the time, of course, many customers were thinking, we have a big financial crisis, we should have a flight to safety, I'll take some gold, thank you very much.
Right.
And the smart ones would take physical delivery of their gold, and then you would for sure have real gold, you put it in a safe.
Right.
But they wouldn't feel quite secure. So a lot of people do want gold, want exposure to gold, but they don't want to hold it themselves. And as it turns out, banks habitually sell a ton of gold that they don't actually have. So they promise the customer, you'll have gold.
Say.
Yeah. So, I figured this out, and even worse, they would borrow gold to then sell, but the same gold would be leased out, borrowed by a whole multitude of different banks from the same central bank. So, later on, if you dive into it, you can tell that there's at least 100 times more gold being sold than that there is. There isn't really much chance of going back to actual sound money based on the gold standard.
Right.
Yeah.
So this was obviously pre-Bitcoin for you, right?
Yeah, slightly pre-Bitcoin for me, but about the same time as Bitcoin came out.
Yeah.
And then back in 13, there was an article on Zero Hedge that mentioned digital gold, Bitcoin.
Okay.
And I was like, well, digital gold, I'll take some of that. So pretty much the same afternoon, bought some with my credit card, got started with Bitcoin at $200, and started going up with the bull run of 13, tripled my money, and I was feeling pretty happy with myself, for a commodity or energy product return that wasn't bad. So I took my profit, but I very quickly figured, look, if this triples in a few months and nobody knows about it, this might have a long way to run yet. So then I thought, no, I'll buy back in and I'll stay back in. This could be a long-term play.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent, man. So do you attribute you were in a position where you were paying attention to what was going on, more so than the typical
For sure.
person, right?
I believe that understanding money as a language, understanding the financial system as the way the world operates, is the path to freedom. I think many people don't want to look at it too much, don't want to get into it too much, but I figured at that time, if you want to be free, you got to learn the language of money, and you got to learn the language of the corporation, because that's where the power is. I didn't like the system, but in order to get what I wanted, I had to play along in the system. It didn't make me that happy, but it did pay very well, and I did have a lot of fun.
Right.
Yeah.
And it provided, the opportunity to eventually find Bitcoin and
for sure.
So I see, in a lot of ways, do you see Bitcoin as kind of an escape from that existing system?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's I remember during the big restructuring following the big crisis, I would go to the board of my bank and say, look, no, we can do this right. We can do this with renewable energy. We can do this with gold as sound money. We can do this without over leveraging ourselves. But it clearly wasn't to be. And then when Bitcoin came about and said, look, we are promising something different that nobody can control with provable digital scarcity, I sort of figured, this is something that we can really build on from and build a whole new different system. So I exited, I left the banking system and pretty much went all in Bitcoin back in 16, and I haven't looked back since.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's such a great story. So one of the things that comes to mind as I'm hearing you talk is the sovereign individual thesis.
Yeah, I love the book too.
You love the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So brief synopsis for people who are listening who may not have heard of the sovereign individual, but it's a book written in 1999, published in 1999, on the eve of the millennium, and they're basically predicting the coming information age and the implications for the information revolution on what they call mega political forces, and they trace technological developments and technological revolutions throughout history, showing how they've changed, how they've affected, how nations interact together, how individuals are kind of placed within their relationships to their nations and things like this, and trace how those changes, for instance, around the agricultural revolution, took place over thousands of years, so no one really was able to notice it was happening, right? And then these revolutions got shorter and shorter and shorter until the information revolution that we're experiencing now is happening in tens of years instead of thousands of years. Yep. So people who are privy to the kinds of changes that are happening in the information revolution are much more able to take advantage of the types of the information that they're aware of that they're able to use. Yeah. So, I just am kind of in awe that, well, not in awe, but impressed by the fact that you have been able to utilize Bitcoin as a true freedom technology.
I had good help though, as I was very curious and I like to study a lot. So back in 2016, Andreas Antonopoulos came to Amsterdam, and we had a seminar, and I went up to him and said, "Look, I really like this Bitcoin thing, and you've taught me a lot with your videos. I'm a financial professional. I want to start a Bitcoin fund and create more Bitcoin." And Andreas basically said, "Well, you know what? That's going to be a lot of trouble. What you should be doing is basically buying as much Bitcoin as you can, and then learning as much about Bitcoin as you can." So I think I then found, Bitcoin Twitter, all these things, just kept learning. Even went to do a complete master's in digital currency at a university where Andreas had set up a curriculum, and basically learned as much as possible about the liberation technology that Bitcoin is, and having the luxury of already complete freedom to be able to do so. So then I started, questioning just about anything, questioning healthcare, government systems, and taking just full sovereign responsibility for myself. I quit smoking, I quit drinking, took up exercise, became a lot fitter, became mentally a lot clearer, essentially cleaned up my social circle to hang out with, people that could play a very constructive role in my life rather than being a drain on my life, and essentially went on after the 16 halving, I figured, I might as well go and essentially tour the world and talk to Bitcoiners and see free people until the next halving. So then that's what I did for 4 years. And then through those real life experiences, the real conversations with real people, you can really see it is a whole different, nice world out there. Don't look on the screens too much. Don't listen to the government. Don't listen to anyone, and you'll have a very nice and free life.
Right. So there's a couple things that I wanted to touch to kind of go a little deeper in there. What was it? What was it that made you start wanting to do things like not smoke as much and not drink as much? Was it the fact that you had more time and more freedom to think
No,
clearly
I think
about?
I think John Vallis talks about this a lot. It's the personal transformation that Bitcoin brings. I was quite wealthy before, making a ton of money as a banker, and I would try to spend it all as much as possible on fancy hotels, booze, and a very fun lifestyle. But essentially, you were sort of trying to get away from, the lie and the bullshit that you were living in. When you start to measure everything against Bitcoin, you're like, hell, I'm not spending my money on a pack of smokes or a bottle of booze trying to escape from reality, because my reality is actually quite good. I'd rather stack more sats, think more clearly, and think where I want to go. I think Bitcoin did dematerialize me to a large extent. I mean, I still, probably live, travel a lot more and do a lot more nice things than other people, which do cost a lot of money, but I don't measure it against that. I think through Bitcoin I've gone to value immaterial things much more. Relationships, adventures, travel, these things, rather than having the swanky car and a nice house and staying. Well, I don't stay so much in 5-star hotels anymore. I stay more in lively places where you meet interesting people. It's a big difference. Don't isolate yourself from the world, but participate in it.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I've noticed, very similar things in myself on a smaller scale, so to speak, but like I'm much more drawn to relationships and the kind of experiences, the kind of life-giving things that are in life,
as
right?
As good a life as possible. I mean, what can we do but live as good a life as possible? And with Bitcoin, you can. Once you've been in Bitcoin a few years, you don't have to worry so much about the price or what you can do or what you can't do, and you can just go for the best experiences. And like they say, okay, sunset's free, sunrise is free, but you still got to put yourself in a position to be in that really nice place, to watch that really nice sunrise with those really nice people.
Right. Yeah. So I guess one thing that I'm kind of wanting to dig into here is there are people who have extraordinary amounts of wealth, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the same effects on them, right?
Well,
why? I guess the question that I'm kind of asking, and that we're all kind of asking, and John Vallis is getting into the same kind of questions, is like, why is Bitcoin? Why is wealth in Bitcoin? It's something that affects you in this way, in this brings your life into this positive trajectory of life experiences and relationships, whereas tremendous amounts of fiat wealth, so to speak, doesn't really have the same effect. I'm not saying that people who have lots of fiat
absolutely not
aren't enjoying their lives. Plenty of them are enjoying their lives, but there's
something different about it. It's I think it has something to do with the fiat system not being built to last. Even a lot of fiat, it melts, it decays, it comes from a very corrupt system. It feels bad. I think when I pay somebody in Bitcoin, it's I'll miss my Bitcoin, but it's more respectful to the person that's receiving, because it's a sound money. It's not stolen money. In the fiat system, the bulk of the money is stolen. There's a few productive people out there still, and then the rest of us live off that, which is not a very nice way to live. Bitcoin lets you very honestly, secure your energy and time and efforts for the future, and then you start thinking, I actually do want a better future. How do I get there? Well, I'll start with improving myself. I'll start with improving my friends and my family. I've spread Bitcoin, helped get most of my friends and family started in Bitcoin as well, and I see it in my kids, I see it in my friends. A lot of them have physically improved themselves, fitter, healthier, thought more about the future, learned more. So it is very transformative.
Yeah, that's like I said, at the beginning of the show, it's like the Bitcoin path to me is about, it's just trying to figure out why or highlight, you know, how this money is changing the world and changing ourselves at the same time. And because what I'm starting to realize and learn as I build awareness about the world around me, as well as about myself, there's a lot of like interplay, you know? There's a lot more of a participatory involvement or a relationship that's involved between my innermost being and the world outside of me. Like it's kind of trippy sometimes.
Yeah, it is very trippy, and that's why I think it used to be quite lonely to be a Bitcoiner, because you know you would go to a Bitcoin conference or a meetup, but most of the time, well, you'd be by yourself with like Bitcoin Twitter and online. And that's why I now live in, you know, Bitcoin Beach, El Salvador, where it's only a small village, but you run into international adventurous Bitcoiners all day long, every day, and the conversations that you have there are with everyone on how they are improving their own lives, how Bitcoin is improving the lives of the locals, how things are changing, which is a fascinating discussion. I genuinely believe that Bitcoin fixes everything, and that's why I'm so curious as to now a whole country adopting Bitcoin. What's going to happen there? You know, will we see the BMI of Salvadorans decrease? Will we see the kids staying longer in school? I think we will, but you know, it's a nationwide experiment now.
Yeah, that's truly fascinating. I'd love to hear more about, like, so you've been in El Salvador for a few months now, okay, and what led you to actually move there? Did you decide to go, like?
I went for basically well, when they said we're going to make Bitcoin legal tender, I thought this should have a big impact on the country, and I should go and visit. Trouble was, it was the rainy season at the time, and with my outdoorsy lifestyle, I was like, well, I'll wait until the end of the rainy season, and then when the sun comes through, I'll go and check it out. So I went out with my son, we traveled around the country for a while, and we really saw more optimism and hope than we had seen traveling in a lot of other countries for quite a while. I was already fully planning to go live on a sailboat in the Caribbean and just, you know, ignore the rest of the world and have fun sailing, let's say, between Miami and Brazil. But when I saw the people on the ground, the enthusiasm, I did some English classes for some kids there who are like, you know, bartendering in the hotels for the tourists. And what they were telling me about them stacking sets and how it was changing their lives, I was like, this is a cool place to hang out. So I got involved with the Hope House, just helping out. And now they've offered me an apartment in the back there. So I'm right in the thickest things, talking to everybody all day about how their lives are being transformed.
Wow. Yeah. What an amazing place to be.
Yeah, not bad, and it's a good place to learn to surf as well.
Yeah, man. We'll have to do a surf trip sometime. Have you been learning?
Yes, for sure. No, I've been learning, and it's I think it's part of the whole thing. You just become. You become, well, you talk about Bitcoin, you go surfing, balance, real life, you get a discount. And when I pay my surf lessons in Bitcoin, my phone minutes, my food, my everything is all settled and done in Bitcoin. And that, I think it creates a very high quality of life.
I think it's fascinating that this internet money, which is like this digital thing that typically internet stuff, and you have a lot of technical, you have a lot of geeks and nerds kind of involved in this sort of thing, and so it's a little counterintuitive, but a lot of Bitcoiners are really being drawn to connect back to nature.
That's maybe the Bitcoiners that we see.
Sure. There are plenty other plebs still.
There was this conference in El Salvador where you had a big contingent of, let's say, very pale keyboard warriors that were clearly not used to the sun. They were hiding out inside behind their keyboards. And then there is a very fit, tanned lot of Bitcoiners as well. I do see Bitcoin warriors disappearing into their Bitcoin online worlds, which, you know, good for them. But yeah, like you say, there's a lot of Bitcoiners going for a more real, on-the-ground life. And a real on-the-ground life is remarkably more immaterial than a Twitter battle or whatever. You know, where do we get immaterial pleasure from? Is from real-life relationships and events. You don't get it from looking at a picture of a mountain on your screen. You get it from hiking up the mountain. You don't get it from you know, a Zen CD with the music, the sound of waves. You get it from getting into the sea. That's you know, satisfaction. And that's why we're on this earth, to enjoy as real a life, as good a life as possible.
Is that why we're here?
I reckon. Yeah.
I've been wondering this whole time. Now I know. I think so. I mean, a good life. That's, you know, we have the ability to make the most of our talents. I'm looking now at religion for a source of what's right and what's wrong, but not because they have the answers, but because they've thought about it more than most. What has that process been like for you? What kind of?
I've been reluctant, but I've been.
Do you have much of a background at all?
No, I come from
We chose like the worst place to record a podcast today. I think it's just the you know, powers that be, spiritual powers don't want this content. I think it'll come out okay. But find a quieter place to talk next time.
Yeah, my father was going to be a priest, but he didn't. He did play the organ in church for his whole life, but I'm not baptized or anything. But the process of essentially discovering what the Bible, what Christianity has to say about sound money, about good value systems, I think it's fascinating. And the theology of money I've been reading, honest money, we're studying quite a bit on what essentially the Bible says about sound money and good living, and it's more than you think.
Yeah, I've always been intrigued by the fact that the violent outburst of Christ was like scourging like the money changers out of the temple, you know, turning tables and basically making a ruckus in the entire place.
I do think that many people do think that the Christian doctrine says that money is the root of all evil, but I think that's a misunderstanding.
The love of money.
Exactly.
Which then, you know, you want to kind of get into what did people mean by love back then. Like, what's there are multiple Greek words for love, right? So, man, there's a lot there. Interesting. I wonder what are, just out of curiosity for myself, what are some, maybe a highlight or a couple highlights of experiences you've had over the past couple of years with your family, whether it's been
well, with my family, I went for a big hike in Africa. Climbed Kilimanjaro, like the highest mountain in Africa, down from the jungle, you know, up to the icy top, which was a fabulous experience. With one of my sons, I went to New Zealand on essentially adventure therapy, you know, like downhill mountain biking, bungee jumping, rafting, the lot in New Zealand, which is absolutely stunning. Off-road biking around South America, Colombia off-road, that was fabulous. Yeah, sailing across the Caribbean, it's a good life.
So what made you interested in sailing? Just
freedom. No, I was. COVID never stopped me. Basically, everybody was locked down, but well, that just meant that a lot of the hotels were on special, and they would open up especially. So I kept traveling throughout, trying to find free places and essentially supporting places that chose to be open for business. If you were a place and said, look, we're going to welcome people, it's like, yeah, you'll have my custom. So I did that, but the airlines were just getting nastier and nastier. So I figured I'd go for a censorship-resistant mode of travel and get my captain's license to be able to sail between my home in Portugal and the Caribbean, back and forth, maybe pick up some Bitcoiners along the way, in the old-fashioned way, without a mask, with the wind in the sails. And I must say, sailing is absolutely fantastic. But even now with COVID, they still want you to do like bloody tests, even if you sail between islands.
Right.
So it's not as censorship resistant as you might think.
Right.
But,
Man. Yeah. Have you thought about like private jet travel or anything like that?
I used to travel by private jet in my Fiat life.
Right.
Yeah. So it's. Then there was a status symbol. I would take a picture. In my suit in front of the jet. One time on a Friday afternoon, I was in London. I had to pick up my kids from school in Amsterdam, and I took the private jet to Amsterdam to pick up my kids from school. That was, that was life.
That's
but
awesome.
I must say that since I'm in Bitcoin, I do a lot of fun stuff. But I'll take a private jet if that's the only way I can get somewhere.
Right.
But I don't think I could justify spending the sats for the picture.
Right. Yeah, I definitely see that like coming up in the future as the restrictions get, increase and as we're like forced into these other options, the jets to me, at least for Bitcoiners, it's really going to be more of a tool of sovereignty, right?
Yep.
It's a tool in the tool belt. Not a status symbol. Like the whole point is to be private and to
exactly.
be, not have to like tell three companies and three governments what exactly you're doing and where and when you're going to be there and stuff like that, and get their permission. But
I must say that traveling between El Salvador and Texas and Florida, it's easier again than it used to be.
It is.
If you leave from here, I'm the only one basically at the airport here in Texas or in Miami. If you go to El Salvador, you can bypass all the queues, just go for the self-service check-in, because they don't have to test or check anything. So you're one of the few people that can just go through. Same going back out. They just say, have you done what you need to do? And you pinky swear that you have, and no checks are done, and you just fly in and out. So that's pretty good.
That's great.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Man. So what do you see the what kind of, I guess, advice do you have for plebs like me, or other guys, because a lot of us, we're kind of on this journey and we're trying to stack sats. We kind of came into this a little later. Some people, I know, are just learning about this right now. And so like, it's very hard for some people. Thinking of a couple people in particular that I've heard in the last couple weeks who are looking at this and thinking that they missed the boat, thinking that the opportunity, I've lost the opportunity. The opportunity cost for them has been so extreme that it's very hard to like wrap their head around, right? Yeah. Like learning about Bitcoin when it's $100 and not buying it and not utilizing the freedom technology that it offers, and then just waiting and seeing how things are developing. And in my opinion, it's going to get worse and worse.
Sure, yeah. Look, at the same time, we've all had that chance. We've all had the opportunity to buy Bitcoin at $100. Whether we knew about it or not, we had the chance to learn about it, we had the chance to do it. I don't think it matters at what price you get into Bitcoin. The only thing that matters in Bitcoin is how long you hold on to it. And it also doesn't matter how much Bitcoin you get. Only thing that matters is sort of what percentage of your savings, what percentage of your income you get into Bitcoin. With Bitcoin doubling, roughly every year, if you put 10% of your income or 10% of your savings in just 3 or 4 years, that will be equal to a full year's. So my advice, very simple to everybody, get rid of your bad habits, put as much as possible into Bitcoin, and hold on, just go 3, 4, 5 years, as long as possible, and you'll be right. That's the path to Bitcoin freedom, that's the path to liberation. Yeah.
I couldn't say any better myself. That's really encouraging.
Maybe as a final tip, sell your house, sell your big stuff. It's just leverage over you. Bitcoin is very liberating, but it is not as long as the governments or as long as people still essentially have leverage over you. When I sold my house and really just went all in Bitcoin, that's when I felt suddenly really free. Self-custodying my Bitcoin, not having anything that people could leverage against me, that was full freedom. You need tools to make more Bitcoin, you need a place to live and a means of transportation, but basically put everything into Bitcoin, keep stacking and stack it for as long as possible, and set yourself a goal. Where are we at now? 22. Easily until the next halving, don't think of anything apart from putting as much of your sets into Bitcoin. Drink some beers less, live a little bit healthier, and stack for years. And in the meantime, you learn a lot about Bitcoin, a lot about yourself. I'm absolutely sure that we don't know what the Bitcoin narrative will be just 2 years from now. It's like surfing a wave. It just keeps teaching us and showing us new things that we didn't know about Bitcoin, about ourselves. But if you stay humble and keep learning and don't get stuck in particular views on Bitcoin, your life will improve dramatically year over year just sticking with Bitcoin.
Yeah, 100%. I've definitely noticed that for myself in just a short time that I've been involved with this. And it is kind of harsh realization for some people to recognize that a lot of the things that we think are assets that we think we can rely on are actually liabilities, right?
For sure.
I mean, classic investment 101, just from the investment standpoint, which is, as we've kind of gone into, is beyond investment, where it's life. This is, your spiritual direction in life. But having a house, in what ways do you see that more as a liability or a danger?
I had a house in Amsterdam, and I thought that the government might come to me at some stage saying, look, we want a percentage of the value increase of your Bitcoin. We're just going to tax your Bitcoin, and if you don't want to give that, we're going to get foreclosure on your house. That's a simple way. So it's taken me a while. I now have enough confidence that El Salvador is going to be a good Bitcoin country. So now I am looking at diversifying out of my Bitcoin into a house again, but in El Salvador, where I don't think the government will do that, and I will have a nice jungle home overlooking Bitcoin Beach.
Perfect. There's something else that I wanted to dig into, but that was so I guess one of the things that I'm thinking about is how, as you look at what a lot of Bitcoiners right now are focused on, we talk a lot about sifting through the noise and finding the signal. One of the potential threats that I see against Bitcoin is different narratives or different interests kind of coming into the space and dispersing our energy and our focus. Do you see us Does that make sense to you?
Yeah,
do you
no,
see,
I
do you
see that point.
anything
I
like
see
that happening?
Bitcoin lives in an eternal September. There's always a multitude more people coming into Bitcoin than there are. And we do tend to think, look, Bitcoin is libertarian, is freedom maximalist, but there's maybe 100 million Bitcoiners like that. Let's say we get to 1 billion Bitcoiners, but most of them don't care about freedom and don't care about personal sovereignty or responsibility. What will then happen? Will Bitcoin be totally corrupted? I do think that what could happen, well, the worst that could happen is that all the Bitcoin for those people will be custodied by companies, governments, not held under their own control. But that doesn't diminish the opportunity for us to custody our own Bitcoin.
Right.
I do think the narrative might change. I do think there might even be cryptocurrencies to flip in Bitcoin, become bigger in market cap. But that doesn't mean that the technology underlying Bitcoin doesn't keep it being censorship resistant, digitally scarce, unconfiscatable money for those of us that want that.
Right.
It will always be that tool. If a lot of people don't want to use it as such, well, their problem. It doesn't mean that we can't.
Right.
It could, of course, be. Well, there's ways that you could foresee it being corrupted, like if the whole ESG, like, oh, we'll only do green Bitcoin, we'll only do this, we'll do that. But then still there is the protocol as is that will let us use Bitcoin forever in the way that we want to. I think Mircea Popescu, the guy that drowned in Costa Rica, he was incredibly toxic and a big arsehole, even attacking the Bitcoin developers. Basically proving that, if you don't want to agree with other people, you can be as nasty as you want, and you still have full rights to all your Bitcoin, and nobody can take it. Peter Rizzo did some great stuff on the user rights that Bitcoin gives you. I totally believe in those user rights. I will always have a given percentage of all the Bitcoin. Nobody can take it away from it. I can always send it to whomever I want, and nobody's going to be able to change that, like ever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's so powerful. Another thing I wanted to touch on before we close here is you mentioned your family kind of getting into Bitcoin and how your son. I've talked to your son. He's a whiz. So what is that? Because I've heard of a lot of people trying to wanting their family, wanting their wife or kids to kind of understand Bitcoin and kind of get into what it means for them. How did you approach that?
For my own kids, I gave them an allowance, and I fixed the allowance in two ways. I gave them a fixed amount of fiat every week in sats, so the amount of sats would get less as Bitcoin got more valuable. But I also fixed a different amount in sats, so they would get essentially more euros every week. So then after a year or something, they said, oh, can we fix the whole amount in sats? So they would get a fixed amount of sats every week, which tremendously increased in value. Plus we had sort of regular Bitcoin study sessions where we would, this university in Cyprus, they had an online course, so we would have lots of friends and family Bitcoin Friday afternoon studying, going through Bitcoin, which led to, my kids convincing the other kids at school, getting into trouble with the economics teacher calling me doing lectures at the schools and getting the whole school and the teachers and the parents and everybody into Bitcoin.
No way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that was a long time ago, so they were pretty happy about that still.
Yeah,
especially since all these kids were then still way underage, but at that time there was no age limits on Coinbase and whatnot. But then the age limits got imposed, and so all these underage kids got frozen out of their wallets until they were 18. So a forced hodl. So that was pretty nice. Yeah. And another way that I approached it is, being a certified financial advisor and a banker a long time, the people that were reluctant to get into Bitcoin, I wouldn't have too many qualms about saying, look, just give me some money, I'll hold some Bitcoin for you, and when you're ready, I'll give it to you. So I'd type out a private key for them, on an old school typewriter, laminate it and everything, mark it in an envelope, put it in a safe, so many sats for this and this person for whenever they're ready. And then maybe half a year later, they say, yeah, still have that key, and say, yeah, I can show you how it works, and then get them in like that. I think for many people to start with key management is a bit of a challenge.
Right.
I don't mind doing it. I'm fairly systematical. So you start with that, the value increases, and you transfer the keys, and people take control, and then start taking control of their own lives and everything else.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. That's great. Man, I just think it's awesome that you orange pilled the whole school like that.
Yeah, and then another school, and it's been good.
Rad.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself? So, there's so much. As we just attended the Bitcoin developers meeting last night here in Austin. By the way, we're here at the Driskill Hotel in Austin. This is I think the oldest. One of the nicest hotels here in Austin, founded by Colonel Driskill himself, right? But one of the things I noticed at these BitDevs meetups and in Austin here, it's a lot of entrepreneurial energy kind of coming into the space. A lot of people working on different projects. A lot of mining opportunities coming to Texas. Do you see yourself interested at all in getting into the business side of Bitcoin, having been very involved in the business side of
I did. Back in 2016 I set up a Bitcoin fund, essentially for a startup bootcamp, incubator. At the time I was doing a fintech course at MIT just for fun, and somebody knew, hey, he's doing some stuff with Bitcoin. So the incubator asked me to come present a Bitcoin business plan, because it was getting hot at the time, and they were like, well, it won't be real, but at least we'll have some Bitcoin, for people to talk about. But then I actually got voted in, so I launched a Bitcoin fund and they gave me some startup capital, with which I just bought Bitcoin and put it on the balance sheet.
Right. You probably did way better than any other
Well,
company,
exactly.
right?
And then I just kept on studying, and the company was doing really well. So what I've been doing in the last few years, essentially I took that private because it was too difficult with bank accounts. So basically went Bitcoin only. But I do want to end each year with more Bitcoin. So I do that through the use of Bitcoin derivatives, like options and Bitcoin collateralized loans. Essentially borrow money based on your Bitcoin to buy more Bitcoin in a dip, do these things. And now that there is companies becoming more professional, Blockstream Finance, Swan, maybe even Unchained, now that people are starting to use Bitcoin derivatives for risk management, and there is a bigger demand for high net worth individuals to take responsibly managed Bitcoin positions, then yes, I do think I am interested in getting back into it. And in fact, I already do that.
Right.
I just do it for friends and family and relations rather than for a company.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share? This is a fairly intimate audience. We're not I like to keep it very personal and everything like that. But is there anything you'd like to share your Twitter or?
I follow Twitter, but I don't really say anything. So I keep up with Twitter for my news, but I don't think. Well, it's getting less interesting and less valuable, I think. So I think I gave up all my social media. Don't do any of that. But I do really like catching up with people over a sunset dinner at Bitcoin Beach, taking the time. And I do think for people to come out there and just live on the Bitcoin standard, live the Bitcoin life for a few weeks amongst other Bitcoiners in a Bitcoin village, that really changes your perspective, and that really brings it home. So if I can give some advice to your listeners. I'd say come out there, come out, we'll ride mountain bike or ride horses and go surfing, talk about Bitcoin a fair bit, and then you see how it goes from an abstract concept to a real life.
Right, right. Well, how can people get a hold of you in order to do that? We can talk afterwards
sure.
as well, and I'll plug in something in the
sure.
show notes.
I've got my Telegram you can share.
Email or Telegram. Cool.
That'll be perfect.
Great. Thanks so much for talking, Sebastian.
Yeah, thank you, John. Maybe we'll do it some other time in a more quiet place.
Yeah, that might help. Well, with that, that's all I have for you guys. May you live a meaningful life and enjoy your freedom as a sovereign individual.